Hey, everybody, and welcome to another long overdue episode of Phil and the Mic. I, as always, am Darrin Michael, and with me, the man, the myth, the legend, the man who has spent the last 3 weeks traveling up and down the East Coast helping out our first responders, and that is Mr. Phil Calise. Phil, nice to have you back.
Hey man, it's good to be back. It's definitely good to be back. I don't know about helping first responders. I think first responders needed to help me the way things were going. But it's been a long month of March so far for me. March is a long month in the Northeast. It can be actually one of the worst months in terms of weather. A lot of rain, a lot of cold, a lot of pretend it's almost spring, but usually not quite there. And for me, this month of March was a little special. Took a part out of me permanently.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about that, and people aren't going to know this, but first you went on vacation to Virginia, and while you were there, you decided to ditch your family and you went to the local hospital to help them out. And that was really, really nice of you. I mean, just a stand-up guy you are. But what people don't realize is that when you came back to New Jersey, you went to the hospital and you said, "Hey, how can I help?" And they said, "Listen, you know what? Since we've been on lockdown for so long, we haven't performed any surgeries. Would you be able to come to the hospital and help us out by allowing us to practice a surgery on you?" And you're like, "Yeah, what do you need me to do?" And they're like, "Well, one of our new people here, he's never taken out an appendix. So would you be willing to let that happen?" And dude, let me tell you something, man. I am not man enough to do that. So the fact that you went into the hospital and said, "Hey guys, you can take out my appendix," man, I must commend you, man. You are just an awesome guy, and I wish there were more people like you out there.
Yeah, I think it's even more than that, because not only did I let them take out my appendix, I said, let me sit in the hospital for 30 hours waiting for the surgery. That would make this even more wild. So let's go all in. Let's jump right into the deep end. Let's make me suffer for almost 2 days. And then let's perform the surgery and make it a little riskier. Why make it a simple in and out? Let's go a little crazy.
The thing is, when I don't know much about appendectomies except for the fact that the appendix apparently serves no purpose. And, but to me, like if somebody says, "Hey, you know what, you need to have an appendectomy." Well, that's because your appendix is inflamed and it's probably going to potentially burst if you don't get it out, right? So I'm still trying to figure out how they let you sit there for 30 hours without taking your appendix out. I mean, are they just hard up on money, and so they needed you to stay that extra day so that they can get more money from you? I mean, or did you request to stay because you love hospital food? I mean, what's the real reason here?
I think it's because when I entered into the facility, they asked me some questions, and I inadvertently must have mentioned I want a minimum wage surgeon to work on me. And when you get a minimum wage surgeon, you get minimum wage results. So he took one look at me. He said, he could wait a while. He looks healthy and strong. He's fine. On to the next one. He only's paying me $8 an hour anyway, so we'll let him suffer a little bit.
The best part of your story, and this is the part that I want you to talk about, right? Was there a point when you realized that your surgery was delayed because they were doing elective surgery?
Man, it's a bit of a blur.
Sorry, Mr. Police. Mrs. Jones needs to get her breast implants put in, so we're going to have to delay you for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, they gave me, I will be fair to them and say this. They didn't do a whole lot of BSing me. They did a whole lot of, we have no idea. It was much more of an ineptness than it was I think, like a purposeful, spiteful, or there was any intent. I think it was more just an absolute inept hospital that 12 months into COVID with no visitors allowed, kind of does what they want, beats to their own drum. I happen to get into the crosshairs of that when I came in with what I thought was I basically walked in and diagnosed it for them. I mean, this is like as good as it gets for a hospital.
Yeah.
I come in with my backpack. I got my books I want to read. I'm thinking a few hours into the diagnosis, I'll get some pain meds. I'll kind of just watch a little TV, read a couple books, catch up on some stuff. it'll be a stinky, 18 hours or whatever. I'm fairly optimistic. It's a pretty in and out, open and shut case. I tell the guy as soon as I get there, I got stomach pains. They're not regular stomach pains. I'm pretty positive I need my appendix out.
Yeah.
He seemed to agree with me. This seemed to be an open and shut case. There wasn't a lot of collaborating. There wasn't a lot of trying to think through it. They give you that yummy stuff to drink, the contrast. So you do your CAT scan, comes back within an hour. Ding, ding, ding. It's the appendix. And then what goes from there is 30 hours of misery, a bursted appendix, and a pissed off patient and wife who just was ready to murder someone. So,
but you know what? The positive side on this is that you tested negative for COVID, right?
Twice. They made sure they jammed that thing up my nose so far, not once, but twice. So before they removed my appendix, they knew without even remote certainty, there was no doubt that I was not of the corona. I had no corona.
Well, they checked you for coronavirus when you got there, and then they checked you again prior to going to surgery.
Which there was a lighthearted moment with the ER nurse, I'll say, where she was very nice at the beginning, and she was like, "Oh, Mr. Calise, this is the worst thing. I got to do a COVID test before you really even get started. Hospital protocol." I had never, by the way, 12 months into the pandemic, I was tooting my own horn. I had never had a COVID test because, quite frankly, I haven't really had a scare, and maybe the one or two where it was like, "Oh, maybe." I was like, I feel fine. I'm not getting tested. I feel good. I work from home. It's not that big a deal. So I broke my record 12 months into the pandemic. It kind of pissed me off. It felt like, I lost my record and I had no chance. I had no choice. Yeah. But after she does that, she comes back. Then I do my MRI, my CAT scan. Yeah, you need your appendix out. She comes back in to do vitals and goes, "I got to do another COVID check." She goes, "We did the regular one, but now we have to do like the better one." Oh. So I'm thinking to myself, we couldn't just do the better one 2 hours ago. Why did we do the half one and now we're going to do the better one? Like, what? Why did we do the? It didn't make any sense to me. So I said to her, "Is there any reason we didn't just start me off with the good one? Like, what are we doing?" "Oh, it's the protocol." Yeah, the protocol is we make some extra scratch on you and we hit you for 2 COVID tests. That's $280 a pop or whatever they charge in the hospital, and away we go. Haven't even gotten any bills yet, so hopefully this podcast takes off because I got probably $5,000 in bills coming to me or some made up Monopoly number that they'll hit me with.
Well, the good news is, a lot of times when you go in there for surgery, they say, "Hey, we need to shave your head ahead of time," and you were already way ahead of that, so that's good.
Came in prepped. In case they had to go into the old cerebrum, I'm ready to go. What do you need to check? You need to go into here? I'm good.
I was starting to feel, really self-conscious because I'm like, my God, the guy doesn't want to be on the podcast with me so much that he's going to now go into the hospital and have his appendix removed. I mean, it's like you're throwing every excuse at me. I'm like, okay, great. Now your appendix burst. I mean, come on, break.
The dog ate my homework. My appendix burst.
That's right.
You name it.
And to punish you for that, I should quiz you on something, but I don't want to embarrass you like I did last time, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, please don't.
I was going to quiz you on the football free agents. I was just going to throw names out there. I don't even know who these guys are.
Don't hit me with the backup, backup center on the Chargers is. Listen, hey, I did do a good job for us in this regard. I disappeared between vacation and appendix and what have you, and kind of bridged the gap on a slow month of sports. So March, I kind of walked right into March Madness now. We got free agency with football. Baseball's 2 weeks away. I mean, this is kind of a more exciting time than a few weeks ago where it was like, we're still kind of far away. So inadvertently, if I had to miss a few weeks of sports, I didn't exactly miss a big time in sports over the last 2.5 weeks. So.
You did a wonderful job, Phil. Really, really great job. Great job. It's funny because, this time of year, it's always, everything is like, March Madness. Oh my God, March Madness. Everybody was so excited about March Madness. I mean, growing up, March comes around and you're just so excited. I don't know about you. I can't get as excited as I was before. And it's funny to see how the NFL truly is the #1 sport. I mean, you know, we got the March Madness tournament coming up, but what's everybody really talking about right now? It's football free agency. That's really the I think that's really the main hot topic right now. And granted, listen, as that dies down, which it is going to shortly, you know, people are going to be more into the NCAA, but then you got baseball starting. So it's, you know, it's I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And I think with the NCAA, there's only one team that's really been dominant. And, you know, and I guess that's exciting that, you know, anytime we go into the tournament with an undefeated team, then you've got that chance that maybe they'll win it all. And it hasn't happened since 76. And of course, I don't want it to happen this year because 76 was the Hoosiers. But we'll see. We'll see. So, you know, why don't we start? Let's start by talking about a little NCAA. Let's go in a little bit of a reverse order, you know, rather than the NFL, because NFL gets so much props anyway. A couple of things that I just wanted to talk about that happened last week, and I wanted to make sure that you had seen these things. You did see that Georgetown won the Big East over Creighton, right? And they won
I
by
did.
25.
Patrick Ewing back at the Garden.
They won by 25 points. I mean, that is a shellacking
But,
for a. What?
By the way, Patrick Ewing looks like he ate Patrick Ewing.
Oh,
you see the size of Patrick Ewing now? He's a big boy.
He's put on a lot of LBs.
He's put on some LBs. A healthy 100.
You think so? You think he's over 300?
Oh, he's got to be pushing 350.
No kidding. I'll have to take a look at it. Hey, listen, whatever happens, I mean, he took a team that was very mediocre this year, and they went through they crushed Creighton in the final. Now, the thing with Creighton, and that's interesting, I know that the coach was suspended, I think for only a game, for saying some racially insensitive things. And I guess his team was really upset about this. So, you know, what I wanted to know from your perspective is, you know, obviously that had some bearing because Creighton is actually a much better team than Georgetown, and they got just crushed. Does that hold over? I mean, that kind of thing, when you've got your players that aren't happy with your coach, is that kind of thing going to affect how they play in the tournament?
I don't know if that, I don't want to make more of it. I mean, I also heard a couple of the players come out and defend the coach and say it hurt them, but they think he's a great guy and been a great mentor. I mean, they ran into a hot Georgetown team. Georgetown blitzed through the Big East in the tournament. They beat Villanova, I believe. I mean, they ran through the Big East. They got hot. It happens. I mean, I don't think Creighton is exactly your surefire, you know, team. I believe, what are they, a 5 seed or a 6 seed this year?
I think
they're you know, they're, yeah, listen, I wouldn't be shocked if they went out in the first round, but I don't know if that's more having to do with their talent versus, you know, obviously they, you know, don't want to lose the championship game there, but I don't want to put too much into it. Georgetown was hot. They were hot. They found a hot 4-day run and, you know, magically made it. They probably, you know, them and I can't remember, but there was a couple teams that obviously caused teams on the bubble to be out. Because they stole bids. So there was a few. Few big stealers.
Pac-10 didn't like Oregon State win or something?
I think you're right because Oregon State's a 12 seed, so they must have been. When you see the big schools being an 11 or 12, they had to steal a bid. Yeah, there was a few. There was a few. There was. I don't think there was as much of that with the small schools. I think the big schools did it this year.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because, you know, I truly feel that on any given day, anybody can really beat anybody. You know, you got a team hot, they're shooting 75% from 3. It's tough to beat a team like that, you know? So, you know, Georgetown is definitely probably one of the hottest teams coming into the tournament, and we'll see what they can do. We'll see what they can do. You know, another game that I wanted to mention was, and this one might not be as exciting on the surface, but Liberty played Northern Alabama in the Atlantic Sun Championship. And the interesting thing about this is that Liberty, no matter what happened in that game, they actually clinched a spot in the tournament. Did you hear about that?
Was that COVID related? I don't know. I didn't.
It's really interesting because I'm like that doesn't even make any sense. But what happened was Northern Alabama went from Division II to Division I in 2018 to 19 season. and they must, by NCAA rules, they must complete a 4-year transition before they're actually eligible for the tournament, which I thought was kind
Wow.
of interesting. So no matter what happened, they couldn't go to the tournament, even if they won.
It almost, I had no idea. It almost makes you wonder why they were allowed for their conference tournament then, because they made the championship game irrelevant. It's kind of odd.
They're Division II, and they come over and they make the championship game within 4 years. I mean, that's
yeah, no, it's great. It's a great success, but it just seems odd that they would. Okay, interesting little fun fact.
Yeah. So I want to get a little bit into the tournament. Those were just two games that I thought were really fascinating. But going into the tournament, there's a lot of interesting things going on in the tournament, and I actually have 6 first round upsets that I'm picking. And
before you do that, to me, the theme of the tournament is twofold. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up, first of all, the tournament's all in Indiana. First time ever, right? I mean, this is not your west, north, south, east, whatever regions. This is literally all in Hoosier land.
Yep.
All being played between Purdue, Butler, Indiana, and I believe Indianapolis, where the football stadium is, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the whole tournament's taking place in a 80-mile radius. I think that's going to play a part in this because you don't get that 3 seed that happens to be caught out west where they got a lot of travel, or you don't get the oddball situation where the 12 seeds playing in their backyard and they're almost the favorite in the game. Yeah. Like you always get those quirky scheduling things that happen that you're just not going to have this year. Yeah. You have an Indiana-centric tournament. Everybody descended there 5-6 days ago because they had a quarantine. There's no travel issues. To me, that plays well for the better teams, and it plays well for the favorites. So first of all, I think that's a theme that you're going to see. The better teams, I think, are going to have an advantage because there's no travel. And you would think that some of that makes things even, and now you don't have that. The other theme is the Big Ten is, and I haven't watched a lot of college basketball this year, the Big Ten is obviously must be the real deal. Everybody seems to be a 1 or 2 seed. Yep. I mean, they're loaded, but they haven't won a national championship since 2000. I mean, they're 20 plus years now into this thing. The last team that won a national championship from the Big Ten was Michigan State with Izzo back in 2000. They beat the Gators in 2000. That was the Mateen Cleaves Michigan State Spartans. So the Big Ten has come up very empty in 2 decades. Now, this tournament is ripe for somebody from the Big Ten to win it. They're playing in Big Ten country. Yep. They got 6 of the best 12 seeds or whatever. I mean, so if you want to talk about the themes of the tournament, it's in Big Ten land. They got the best conference in the country. They're seeded to get there. They got easy matchups early on. They're literally playing at home. I mean, I don't know if that's going to bear out. And then you obviously have the third theme, which is the underdog or the small school turned big program Gonzaga, yep, who's now on 2+ decades of being the real deal, yeah, but have never won it all. And they show up undefeated this time, yep, which I don't think it's the first time they have. Maybe they have, but they've had some incredible records over the last 2 decades. We know they play in a lesser competition, but they've been willing to step out, and they played a murderous out-of-conference schedule for years now. Yeah. They're very good, but I think the little nugget that I took that I think sets this up to be wild. You always get these one weird stats that you're like, oh my God, is this going to happen? The last team to go undefeated, the Indiana Hoosiers, 1976. Gonzaga comes in undefeated, and the year your Indiana Hoosiers went undefeated in 1976, the last team to do it and win it all, 2 teams. It was the last time these 2 blue bloods were out of the tournament. No Kentucky, no Duke. It's happened again.
Wow, that's interesting.
35 years later, no Duke and no Kentucky, and here's another undefeated story taking place in the home state of Indiana. So it feels a little like it's got to happen, and I know that's going to piss you off as a Hoosier fan, but it feels like a little destiny. No Duke, no Kentucky, and away we go with Gonzaga. So let's see how it goes.
I don't know about that. I really don't know about that.
It's an interesting thing, though, right? Isn't that interesting? No Duke, no Kentucky for the first time since Indiana won it all undefeated.
There's a lot, there's a lot of interesting things. I was watching. I know. It's Thursday night tonight, and I know there's 4 games and nobody's really watching tonight. But I decided to watch one game, and I saw Drake win. They won by 1 point. And the interesting
The
thing,
rapper,
what?
the rapper won.
Yeah, it was the rapper. That's right. That's right. But they won by 1 point. And I thought the interesting thing about that, and they flashed something on the screen, it was exactly 50 years ago today that they won their last NCAA tournament game. So
Wow.
more interesting stuff. So have you picked a Final Four?
Sure, I picked the Final Four, but you were talking about early upsets. You want to go early upsets first?
Yeah. I can talk about a few.
You go. I'll go. You go. I'll go with early upsets, and then we'll go to Final Four.
Because it's funny because they the big upset thing is the 12-4 game. That's always the big upset. And now it's
12-5, yeah.
12-5. I'm sorry. And now it's even the 13-4. They're talking about a lot of upsets, but there's a few upsets that I see. A few are bigger than others, but I think one of the biggest upsets that I see, and I think this could be just an enormous upset, is actually a really solid Winthrop team beating Villanova. Villanova has lost their top player, their second best player, big forward, is really hurt. He's going to play, but I don't think he's anywhere near 100%. And the funny thing is, they're so low on players. They only have really a 6-man rotation now. Their starting point guard going in before 2 games ago, he had played 16 minutes the entire season. So you're talking about a Villanova team that is hobbling to the tournament, and they are just absolutely ripe to be picked off. And I know they're usually a good March team, but if Winthrop is smart, they're pressing the hell out of this team the entire game, since they only have 6 guys that are going to play, and they're going to wear them down. And I think they're going to upset them. I really do.
Yeah, and you know what? I had Winthrop marked down as one of my teams, and it's about your point with Villanova's injuries. And it's also, Winthrop is like one of those teams that has proven they can be dangerous in March now. They get there from the Big South a lot, and they've been a good team. So I think that makes sense. I'm going to give you one that is a 13, and this is a combination reason. So it's Ohio to pick off Virginia, and it's a couple reasons. One, Virginia is a boom or bust NCAA tournament team. Their style is dangerous in March because they play suffocating defense, and over the course of a season, you do not want to play them because they just make you play ugly, and they hold you in the 50s, and they're just one of those teams. And so they pile up wins, and they're like, and I watch Notre Dame play them. Notre Dame can't break 55. It's always ugly and all that stuff. But what makes them like Syracuse, right, who plays that 2-3 zone, which makes Virginia vulnerable, is they try to also win in the 50s and 60s a lot. And they sometimes can't score to save their life. Right. And so Ohio happens to have a backcourt that I've just heard. Obviously, I've never seen Ohio play. I've just heard Ohio has a very dynamic backcourt. And if there's one way to make Virginia look bad, it's just to penetrate. And I love March teams. I love upsets that have backcourts because it's the teams that you see pull the upsets. When you see the little guy pull off the upset, you always end up seeing a backcourt kid who's like, he could play anywhere. Yep. You see it. As soon as he gets on the court, you're like, this kid's as good as any of the teams he's facing. Right. He doesn't have a whole team with him, but he's got himself. He can do anything. Yeah. And so they got the ball in their hands all game, and it's dangerous. So I think Ohio could pick off Virginia. And I have a couple others, but Winthrop was one of mine. What, you got any others that you think stand out? I think that one's my big one.
I agree with Ohio, and a lot of people don't realize, they pulled out of the ACC tournament because of COVID concerns. So they haven't even played. They're coming off this big COVID.
Virginia, yeah.
Yeah, so they have had, in Ohio, their one of their guards is, they're saying he's an NBA player, which is odd coming from one of those small schools like that. They say he is just incredible. So I think that's a really, really good one. I would say the team that I wouldn't want to be right now is Colorado. they're a 5 seed and they had a nice season, but they're running into arguably the hottest team in the country in Georgetown. And Georgetown plays that suffocating defense. And it's unbelievable. They just have some really, really great athleticism. I think Colorado is a better team. I definitely do. I think Georgetown is a very average team, but they are just playing at such a high level right now. I don't think Colorado is going to even know what hit them. I mean, they're just going to throw this crazy defense at them. They're going to force them to take shots they don't want to take. And I think Georgetown is going to come out of this with a victory.
I think it's odd that, this year, some of the 12 seeds are your power schools, because it's usually not like that.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of an odd year. The other two games I would think are ripe for an upset. I think Texas Tech's been a little overrated this year. So I kind of like Utah State in that 11-6 matchup. Yeah. Texas Tech has got a couple of good players, but I feel like they were overranked a lot of the year. They got 10 losses. I don't think they're as good as their ranking.
Yeah.
And then I had to find a 12. I believe it's a 12. I took UC Santa Barbara. Correct me if I'm wrong. I forget who the 5 seed is. I remember locking into that one as the 12-5. That's Creighton. Okay, yeah. And that I was just jumping on the idea that, to your point earlier, Creighton looks a little off. They got the controversy. Yeah. They haven't looked very good of late. I know they stumbled down the stretch even heading into the Big East tournament. Also heard good things about UC Santa Barbara's backcourt. I'm just like a guy who's going to flock to. If you want to pick upsets, find me backcourts, find me something unique that, a team could do it. And then I also, if you want to cheat when you're picking upsets, just go look at Vegas's spreads.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see these 5-12 games, it's a 3 or 4 point spread. You're like, Vegas is telling you it's almost a pick 'em. Yeah. And so if you want to ever just cheat when you're filling out a bracket, go look. I've seen 14 seeds that are 8-point underdogs. That's not a big underdog.
No, not for
I think Ohio is like a 6-point underdog as a 13 seed against Virginia. So Vegas is telling you this is a good game. This isn't like going to be a blowout. So if you want to cheat, that's a way to do it too when you're making upset picks.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. And you know what? It's funny because there's even a few games out there where the lower seed is actually favored, which is really, really. I wanted to just mention there's 2 teams I think that you should look out for, because these 2 teams they're just March teams. The first one being Michigan State. I know they're playing tonight. They have to play UCLA. If they get past UCLA, they play BYU. This is not a good Michigan State team. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they are. They're really not. But Michigan State in March, just even when they don't have a good team, they put together wins. I don't know how they do it, but I would never want to face Michigan State and Tom Izzo ever. And then the other one that I wouldn't want to face is, you've got this San Diego State team who's got a 6 seed who had, obviously that makes them, virtually that makes them a top 25 team. They had a great season. They're a solid team, but they're running into a Syracuse team that's ranked 11th, who again plays that crazy 2-3 defense. So it's one of those things where unless they're really shooting the ball well, that defense will give you fits. And you can't say that San Diego State has seen a defense like that, because nobody plays defense like that, especially on the West Coast.
So yeah, Syracuse is a hit or miss team in the tournament, but they can be very dangerous. They've had when they're heavily seeded, they don't do as well. When they're a little bit of an under the radar team, sometimes they have incredible runs because that 2-3 zone, and teams can't figure it out, and you have no time to prepare. And funny enough, their best player is Boeheim's son now. I don't know if you noticed,
buddy.
Yeah, but he's putting up like every time I turn around, he scores like 25 points in a game. He's like their best shooter. He's tall. He's like his father, super skinny, lanky, can shoot the ball, shoots over the top of a zone. He's got a little clutch gene in him because he's hit some big shots for them. So I wouldn't be shocked if they make a run this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. So let's hear it, man. Let's hear it. What do you got for your Final Fours?
So I can't go all chalk, although I think there's a feeling that could be the case. So I got to find a few things, but I didn't go crazy. Some years I go a little crazy. This year I didn't. I'm throwing Michigan out. I'm throwing Michigan out. They do have a big injury. One of their better players is hurt.
Yeah.
I got to throw somebody out that's a higher seed. So Michigan's going to be one of the teams I throw out. I'm going to go with, and this is a little bit, I'm taking a shot here. I'm going to go with Texas coming out. I'm trying to be a little different. I'm going to go with Texas. I'm going to go with Gonzaga. I'm going to go with Illinois. I don't want to go with Baylor, but I'm going to go with Baylor. I feel like that's the team you could get away from for sure. Baylor hasn't looked as good. They were undefeated. Then they got crushed with COVID. They haven't been as good since. I don't know if they're going to ever find it again. I think Baylor is one of those teams that was derailed by COVID, clearly. But I'm going to see if they can figure it out. When it's all said and done, though, maybe it's the stat, maybe it's whatever. Maybe it's my pull to see Gonzaga after 20 years of almost getting there, win it. I'm rooting for Gonzaga, so I'm going to take them. I know they're the betting favorite to win it all. I usually don't like that, but I did see something that the betting favorite in March in the last 15 years has won it 7 times. So it's almost about 50% of the time that the best team wins it. Yeah. I wouldn't have thought the percentage was that high, but in the last 15 years, it's almost 50%. So it'll be interesting, but I'll take Gonzaga. But any one of those Big Ten teams clearly can cut the net down. And if they don't, after 21 years and playing in their backyard with 6 or 7 teams that are all capable, it'll be a blemish on the Big Ten. They need to win it between all those teams.
Well, who do you have them playing? Do you have them beating Illinois or Baylor?
Illinois? Illinois, Gonzaga. I think they do get a team into the and listen, I could easily see it could be Gonzaga and 3 Big Ten schools. I mean, that's totally doable this year. But I was trying to be a little different. Texas is a little bit of a wrinkle. I can't say I've seen Texas play much. I'm just taking a flyer on Texas just to be a little different.
Well, I'm gonna agree with you. I mean, the Zags obviously, they've played really good ball. I mean, you can't argue with them being in the Final Four. I don't think anybody is going to have them getting if they get eliminated from the Final Four, then everybody's bracket is going to be done because I think everybody has them in the final. And when you look at the bracket beneath them, that's got Michigan as a 1 seed. Knowing me as a huge Big Ten fan, I've watched Michigan play. All right, they overperformed this year greatly. I think they were picked to finish like 7th or 8th in the Big Ten, and they did really well. But yeah, they do have that key injury. They're a good team, and I still think they're going to win a couple games, but they're not a great team. I truly don't think that they deserve the number 1. But I have them. I think I have them losing to Florida State. But I have to agree with you, and I think Texas is coming out also. I did see them play. They played Indiana this year, and they're a good team. They're a really good team. I think the other 3 divisions are open and shut. I think you've got Baylor coming out. I don't think anybody's going to be able to beat them. And I know nobody's going to be able to beat Illinois. There's no way.
We got the same Final Four?
We got the same Final Four. Now, the interesting thing is with Illinois, and this is why I like Illinois so much. We all agree that the Big Ten is the best conference, right? They literally have been destroying the teams in the Big Ten. Okay, they won the Big Ten tournament, and it wasn't even close. They are a really, really good team, and they were winning games without their best player. He was out for a while. So they've got him. They've got this big 7-footer Kofi Cockburn, I think his name is. He's just a freaking beast. He's like 7'1". He must weigh like 275. I mean, you can't stop him because he's just too freaking big. So I actually have Gonzaga meeting Illinois in the final, but I have Illinois cutting down the nets. I think I think there's going to be a lot of people that are saying exactly what we're saying, and looking at the brackets. And if you really get into it, I mean, you never know who's going to beat who, but at the end of the day, I think that's what's expected. Now, could you see, I could see an elite matchup, an Elite 8 matchup of like Florida State and Texas. Texas has to beat Alabama. Alabama had a really good season this year, but the SEC is just not a great basketball conference. It very rarely is. I mean, they did have a couple good teams. I know Arkansas had a really good season. I know Florida did okay. But overall, it's not a real great conference. So I think you and I are both really onto something with this Final Four. But unfortunately, I believe that you're wrong with your pick, and I think that, like you said, the Big Ten needs to win this one, especially since it's in their backyard. The only thing that would be more perfect with this is if Indiana was a 1 seed and they won. But unfortunately, they didn't even make the NIT because they're so horrible and they fired their coach. So good stuff, man. Good stuff. And it's exciting to watch. No matter what, I think it's exciting to watch. Nobody ever really knows the teams or the players, but it's just fun to watch because you got your brackets. It's like fantasy. It's like doing fantasy sports. You enjoy it because you draft these players or you draft these teams, and so I think that's going to be fun. So I'm really excited about it, and it's going to start up soon. So let's move along and talk a little NFL free agency. You know, I enjoy the free agency because in the beginning, especially, you see people throwing money at guys, and you're just sitting there shaking your head. Like, what is this? And I'll give you an example, like Trent Williams, right? He's the left tackle for San Francisco. I'm not saying he's not good. All right. I think they graded him as like the number 3 left tackle in football. So he's top 10%. He's had a Hall of Fame career. This guy is really good. He's played for 10, 11 seasons. But at age 33, are you really giving him a 6-year deal worth $138 million? And granted, I know that's not all guaranteed, but doesn't that seem a little bit absurd?
Yeah, I mean, he does play a premium position, and there's not a lot of great ones. So that is one of the spots. If you're going to overpay, you do. But yeah, I mean, when I saw those numbers, yeah, it jumps out at you because of his age and because of just the sheer. I mean, it's a lot of money to pay him. So but when you have to always look, to me, like the Niners. They were 2 years removed from the Super Bowl. Yeah. They had a rash of injuries. They think they're right on the cusp. I don't know if they are, because I don't think they have the quarterback.
Yep.
But and they're in I mean, listen, it's hard for me to see the Niners in that division getting back to being like a dominant team. Seattle, if they keep Wilson's really good. The Rams are good. The Cardinals are emerging. We know that's a tough division.
Yep.
But I guess if you're going to overpay, you pay for a tackle. So they did.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, then you got other guys, and I want to kind of talk to you about this one. I know the last couple of years, I know that Dak Prescott has been franchised and making a ton of money, but they gave him 4 years and $160 million. And listen, that's the way that things are going for starting quarterbacks. I understand that it's getting out of control with how much they're being paid. But, my question to you is, I mean, that puts him among the highest paid quarterbacks. I mean, there hasn't really been a Cowboys player that's been able to win a big game since Troy Aikman, and he didn't really win the game because of him. I mean, he just had an unbelievable supporting cast. So to me, Dak is a guy that can't win the big game. So do you think it's wise to throw $40 million a year at a guy that is going to be good in the regular season, hopefully, but can't win that big game? I mean, is Dak Prescott really a guy that's going to take the Cowboys to the Super Bowl?
Considering they were my Super Bowl pick last year, you're asking the wrong guy. I happen to think what sold the Cowboys on giving them the $40 million is simply the fact that they're a 11-win team with him on the field, and they look like a lost soul without him. So that's how valuable the position is. I mean, they got tons of weapons around them, between Lamb and Cooper and Elliott in the backfield. And they got a good offensive line. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to pay them. They're a win now team. They're built to win now. What was their alternative? I didn't even understand why they franchised him the last couple of years. The alternative to paying him is what? What were they going to do? I mean, there was rumors they were going to try to trade him for Russell Wilson. I mean, okay, that's great if you're going to turn around and trade him for a better version of himself. Yeah. But short of that, you're going to take such a step back. And Jerry Jones hasn't won a Super Bowl in 25 years. Yeah. You got to pay the guy. He's still a really good quarterback. The money's monopoly money at this point in the league. But yeah, I think they had to pay him. I just almost shake my head why didn't they pay him sooner?
Yeah,
they should have just paid him.
And I think you make a valid point there, and I don't really disagree with that because for a starting quarterback who's a really great player, if they got rid of him or they didn't sign him, they wouldn't have somebody on their team that's as good as he is. That's what it
Yeah.
comes down to. And like you said, I mean, they're in more of a win now. They're more of a win now team. And I'm not saying that they're gonna win now, but they definitely are not the Jets. They're not a rebuilding team,
No, and and they have to take a step. They know the division's weak. I mean, the division was won with 7 wins. The Cowboys actually were still playing to try to win a division with a 3rd string quarterback.
Yeah.
That's how bad the NFC East is. You put Dak Prescott back there, that's a 10 or 11 win team. They're going to win that division going away next year. So you have to do it. I mean, the Giants aren't good. The Eagles are bad. The Washington football team, hopefully they have a name by then. They're going to,
I doubt it.
I don't know. They're an 8-win team, I guess, maybe. So
yeah,
they need to pick a name though. Can I call them something by next year?
I don't think so. I don't think so. But I can't really. You got to think about it this way, though. I mean, some of the teams in that division have made some good moves. I mean, Washington went out and they got Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, that was a huge signing. The Giants, as insurance, they got the great Rutgers grad Mike Glennon. So, I mean, these teams are really making some really, really good moves to make sure that they end up in the top spot. I mean, my God, I mean, you sign a journeyman quarterback to be your starter. I think you got some problems. Let's just be honest.
The Eagles are handing over their franchise to a guy who wasn't a good quarterback at Alabama or Oklahoma. So that's good.
I know he
Jalen Hurts managed to not win at the 2 schools that all they do is win. So
You know what though? Listen. Look at Josh Allen. And I think maybe they're looking at that guy and they're saying, okay, this guy is a 55% completion guy in college. He gets in the pros. What was he? 72% completions last year, something ridiculous. So you just don't know. You just don't know.
But then, they did stack the talent around Josh Allen. The Eagles are just a little bereft of the talent that Bills have.
It helps, but you still got to make the throws. You still got to make the throws. I mean, we can talk about other quarterbacks that are the exact opposite. And it's interesting coming from our Jets. I know that we're always disappointed with our Jets, but this is one of the things, this free agent signing really bothered me because here's a guy that we drafted with a really, really, really high draft pick. I mean, he was like a top 5 pick. We had him on our defensive line. He didn't really do what we wanted him to do. So we shipped him off to the Giants. And sure enough, last year he has almost a dozen sacks. Turns out he is really good. And he gets signed to a 3-year, $63 million contract. I know you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, Leonard Williams. I think I can't knock the trade. Joe Douglas got a 3 and a 5 for a guy who was underperforming.
Yeah.
He didn't do very good when he got traded to the Giants, but last year in his walk year, he had a big year. Yeah. So I'm still a little leery of what Leonard Williams is. He had one really top year in 5 years, and it was in his free agent walk year. We'll see what he is. I think, we'll see. You brought up the Jets. I think the Jets have actually had a good free agency so far. It's a very different regime with Joe Douglas. It's the Baltimore Ravens mentality under Ozzie Newsome. They're just not going to overpay free agents. They're going to try to build through the draft, and they're going to sign free agents to augment, I think, what they do in the draft. But they're not going to, they signed an edge off the Bengals, Lawson. Yeah. They signed a couple receivers now, Cole from the Jaguars and obviously Davis from the Titans. Davis could be a nice, 1-2 type of receiver in that offense. Cole is more of a 3-4, but that's still better weapons than they've had. They just signed a guard from the Chargers, a 4-year starter within the last 3 or 4 hours. Yeah. So I kind of like what they've done.
Let's look into a couple of those things a little more carefully. I understand they signed this guy Keelan Cole. Here's my problem with that. They signed him to be the fourth receiver. He's an average guy, and they pay him $5.5 million to be the 4th receiver. All right, I have a problem with that. I don't understand that one. And then as far as the guard is concerned, the guard from San Diego, I don't know what they're paying him or what his contract looks like. But
it's like $4 million for one. It's just $4 million for 1 year.
Well, this is what I wrote down. Okay, this was the quote on him. Okay, it says, and this is verbatim. He graded out well below average by Pro Football Focus. So this guy is not a good player. I mean, that's basically what they said. He was not even average. He was well below average. So we're paying a guy. I mean, didn't we learn anything from the offensive linemen that were terrible last year that we signed? You're paying a guy $4 million, or is that just what anybody is going to make on the line? This guy is not a starter. You're talking about a reserve player that, yeah, he's got experience, but he's not a good player.
Well, I'd have to dig into that more because so maybe he's coming off a really down year, and I don't have all the particulars. I only look at it. I believe the stat was he started 57 games in his career in 4 seasons. So he's been on a Charger team that's been pretty decent.
Yeah.
So he is a 4-year NFL starting offensive lineman. So now was he just coming off a bad year? Because I can't imagine if he graded out third worst or whatever you just said, he'd have been a starter for 57 games. So I got to believe he's probably coming off a down year. He was probably better than that the first 3 years, or he wouldn't have been a 4-year starter. I don't know. I'm just going to assume that based on just why would they give him the chance to start that many years? But it's a low risk signing. It's $4 million. Now, the fair point, and I've heard this from a lot of Jet fans, is why didn't they splash bigger? Why didn't they go sign Tooney, right? I mean, Tooney's the obvious guy, the Chiefs paid him an absurd amount of money, and he got to play for the Chiefs. So what exactly were the Jets going to do to win that contract? They gave him $80 million for 5 years, and he gets to block Mahomes and a Super Bowl contender. What were the Jets going to offer him to make him change his direction? Like that, you can't blame them for that. Certain guys just end up getting blown away by better teams.
You're right.
And as I said to a lot of my Jet fans that want to jump off a bridge the last 5 days, when you're a 2-win team, free agents aren't exactly dying to come to you.
Yep.
So if you're going to get them, you're going to pay through the nose to get them. And that's not Joe Douglas's style. So now you got the rubber meeting the road. You got a team with a lot of cap room, but a GM from a philosophy that I don't want to overpay. Yep. So he's trying to get, reasonable deals. He like the edge rusher from Cincinnati, 26 years old, second most quarterback hits, is still going into, this is his second contract. He's a young player. Like that's the kind of people he's going to pay for. He's not going to pay for the 33-year-old left tackle. And he's not going to pay, for instance, he's not going to pay Nelson Aguilar $26 million for 2 years like Bill Belichick decided to do, who that's the team you didn't bring up. The Patriots decided the year they don't have Brady to spend like drunken sailors. They bring in 2 tight ends, paying them a ton, or 2 receivers, an edge. I mean, I think Belichick spent more this offseason than he did under 20 years under Brady.
Possibly.
I think that was a knee-jerk reaction to watching Brady win it all and, quite frankly, knowing that the team just doesn't have the talent anymore. So they went out and tried to basically overhaul the whole damn team. So we'll see. He's a great coach. He might be able to make that a good team. But I got to say, he gave Cam Newton $14 million to come back. Cam Newton stinks. So good luck with that. I mean, he's just not any good. So
that was really interesting. But you know what? I mean, I look at a team like the Bucks, right? And usually after you win the Super Bowl, the team gets dismantled. But I guess Tom Brady, just everybody wants to be around him because he signed for another year. So he literally has another 2 years on his contract. They're bringing back Gronk. They re-signed Shaq Barrett to a 4-year deal. They're bringing back Godwin on a what do you get the
franchise?
Yeah, they franchised him. So they're bringing back all their key parts. I mean, does that make them the favorite next year to repeat this thing? I mean, they're basically gonna they're gonna do it again, and they're gonna get some draft picks, and they're probably gonna sign another. I mean, there's probably gonna be more guys that they're signing that want to come and play with Tom Brady. That's
I'm sure they will. I mean,
the favorite for next year, don't you think?
I think they're the favorite in the NFC.
Yeah.
I think the Chiefs are the heavy favorite to win it all. I mean, they got decimated on the offensive line. I don't think you'll see that again. I think they'll win their 14 games in a nice, quiet fashion. They're just so much better than everybody during the regular season. And I think they'll be hungry to to get back on it. I think, listen, Brady's 40 whatever years old. The only issue with Tampa is just going to be him staying healthy.
Yep.
And it's not even father time. Like, clearly he's defied father time. So I'm not going to go down that road and say one day he's going to wake up and not have it. But, he is 40, whatever, 43, 44. If I had to put money on Mahomes at 25 or Brady at 44, I just think the Chiefs are overall a little better. But I mean, listen, it wouldn't be unfair to say the Bucs are the favorite to get to the Super Bowl. I think that's pretty fair to say at this point. They brought the whole gang back, so I don't know why they wouldn't be the favorite.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. Now, there's always a lot of good stuff to talk about with football. There's a couple things going on in the NBA, and I don't know if you heard. Did you hear what happened to Sean Bradley?
I heard he got into an accident, but I didn't hear any details.
Yeah, he was actually riding riding his bike in the street. Okay, that's got to be a big bike because this guy is 7'6".
Yeah.
And a car hit him from behind. He got thrown off his bike, spinal injuries. He's now paralyzed.
Oh wow! I didn't even read all of it. Okay.
It's crazy. So wish him the best. I mean, they said he's in really good spirits, but man, that is just wow. That's awful to hear. So I felt bad for him. Interesting that LeBron bought into the Red Sox. He owns one of the soccer teams in England. Now he buys into the Red Sox. I know this guy's got plans to be an NBA owner. He wants to be following the footsteps of Michael Jordan. Hopefully he'll be a little more successful. But, I'm just mentioning it because I think I got to mention it. But, I can't stand LeBron. I really don't care. Did you see that they actually did come out with some new basketball rules and a way to incentivize the teams to get fully vaccinated? So if you're going to get expanded benefits if your team is fully vaccinated. And some of the things that you get is you don't have to wear masks at practice. You can actually leave your hotel when you're on the road and you're allowed to dine out, et cetera, things like that. So interesting stuff that's come out of the NBA. Just a few things that I wanted to mention. And then the one big thing that I wanted to mention that I don't think anybody saw coming, and I missed this when we were talking about the NFL, is Deshaun Watson. All of a sudden you've got these women coming forward, and a couple of them are saying that he was harassing them. Another one said that he forced her to do something that she didn't want to do. And then, they're all saying that he said, hey, I'm a pro football player. I can make or break your life, or whatever the case may be. This kind of behavior is pretty disgusting if it's true. And I'm not going to say whether it's true or not. I mean, that's up for, obviously a court to decide. But, if something like that is true, then it really pains me to see how these super wealthy athletes are going around thinking they're bigger than life and they can do whatever they want. What are your thoughts about that situation? What do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's innocent until they're proven guilty, and so there's a lot of this stuff that gets thrown out there. I think it's two parts. I mean, obviously, one, if it's true, then that's a big blemish on Watson, and it's going to cause him some issues in his career. I don't know what the NFL, if it's proven true, I'm sure the NFL is going to come drop the hammer suspension-wise. I think from just a purely sports perspective, I got to believe it's going to change the dynamic of him being traded in Houston, because I don't think with the amount of first-round picks you need to give up to get him, I don't know if any NFL team now is going to be willing to go that extra mile to get him with this cloud over him. And I don't think I think you have to make the trade soon. And so I think anyone that was getting ready to put a giant package together to get him has to take a pause, because you're never going to be able to investigate it on your own soon enough to figure it out. So I think there's a few women that have now come out. So usually they say if there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, you start hearing 1, 2, 3 women, tends to be more likely to be true than if it's just one off, So I think like the Jets, the Dolphins, the Niners have been rumored, the Broncos. I mean, 3, 4 first-round picks and you're going to trade for a guy that has a looming sexual harassment scandal above their head in this day and age on top of it, I think he's going to have to kiss and make up with the Texans and stay there, because I think he's almost untouchable right now, or untradeable. And so I don't think this works to Watson's favor at all anymore, where he was, I think, calling the shots. I think now he's going to have to kind of walk back, tail between his legs, and just make up with Houston and go on. Because I don't know how the Texans are going to get more than a couple first-round picks at most for him. And I don't think they would do that. I don't think that would be enough. Saying all that, because we're a very forgiving society and because there's no like rape, it's more like what I heard is more like unwanted advances, at least is how I would, I guess, deem it.
Oh, I heard that there was some
more than that.
there was some forceful activity. Yeah, I'm not.
Okay, I didn't hear that. I thought it was more like just not willing to, like, you know, be more like just unwanted advances that made the workplace uncomfortable. I thought that's what I heard. But if it's more than that,
two of them said, and then the third one said that she actually had to perform an action on him.
Oh, so then listen, yeah, I mean, listen, he's getting into that's a dicey situation. I don't think any team is touching anything to do with that situation now. And so I think that puts to bed the elephant in the room, which was the foregone conclusion Watson was getting traded. I think that's gone now. I think, and it's funny, we talked like maybe the last podcast, because we took a 3-week break, at least one of the last few, we talked about like 6, 7 big quarterbacks might get traded. At the end of the day, we may be down to Wentz and Darnold, and they're not even two of the biggest, right? Wilson, now it's all cooled off. You know, because these big quarterbacks, how do you trade them? You can't get fair value back for them. They're too good. No, so you can't when cooler heads prevail and when people take a step back, organizations don't trade Russell Wilsons. You know, the Texans really don't want to trade Deshaun Watson anyway, scandal aside. Like, you don't want to trade these guys. They're too valuable. So,
well, you know what? Here's the thing. I mean, it's interesting that the Texans did sign Tyrod Taylor to a 1-year, $12.5 million contract. So I think that they're taking that extra precaution, because let's be honest, if he is found guilty of that, I mean, you got to toss him out of football. I mean,
he'll be gone for a while.
You know, and then and then obviously he'll be able to apply to come back the next year. You know, and the only thing that he's got going for him, I mean, you take a Ray Rice situation, and this is different. I know it's different, but it's if it ends up being true, it's still pretty heinous anyway. You know, he's at the top of his game, so he will be back. You know, Ray Rice, and that's unfortunate that, yes, like you said, when guys are really great, we are very unforgiving. But in this culture nowadays, this cancel culture, nobody's going to touch this guy. So there is no trade on the table. He may not play this year, and his life is going to be forever changed. I mean, plain and simple.
Yeah, and I thought the Tyrod Taylor signing was more to put the Texans in more of a leverage position prior to the scandal. I thought it was them saying, all right, Deshaun, you want to sit out the year? We have another quarterback. Because I thought he was pushing them, saying, like, I'll sit out the year if you don't trade me. And I thought that was a good signing for the Texans, because they have a legitimate, you know, serviceable starter that if he decided to pull that power play, they could say, okay, it's your loss. You're sitting out. You're losing $20 million, and we'll keep moving. So now it's a whole different ballgame. The timing seems very fishy.
Yeah.
It just, like, I mean, I know the timing on a lot of these always is kind of out of the blue. Mm-hmm. And so that shouldn't in and of itself be fishy. But I'm always like a little bit, it just seems a little fishy where then like somebody comes out and then second and third, and, you know, it could be they feel emboldened by what is bad behavior and they feel comfortable now because somebody else came out. So I don't want to say that wouldn't be the case, but he's trying to get traded and he's been very vocal. And then all of a sudden these bad things come out against him. Feels a little like, you know, who knows?
Interesting.
An episode of Matlock. He could figure it out.
Yeah, it's really strange, and there's a few things that I want to touch on, just and then we'll to wrap it up. I like to throw in my little tidbits of news at the very end.
Tidbits.
I thought this was really interesting. So there's a Cubs fan, I think it was 2 years ago, that was hit with a foul ball, right? And I think we can both agree that we're surprised that there's not more serious injuries in baseball over the years. And I mean, there's a few here and there, but nothing really serious. This woman, I guess, got hit in the face and it broke her jaw and she had to have reconstructive surgery and all this other stuff. So she actually sued the Cubs for negligence. All right. And what she said was that she got hurt because they didn't have the net far enough down the line. And so she went to court over that. And the court said, you know what? You have enough here to proceed with your lawsuit. So they're going to end up going to court. And I thought that was really, really interesting because I don't think that's ever happened before where somebody's been entitled because they got the signs, hey, watch out for foul balls, whatever you hear at your own risk or whatever. And we see these foul balls coming in at 100 miles an hour or whatever. I mean, it happens all the time. Usually there's a million people that stand up and put their hands up for the ball and everything, but it'll be interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how this works out, because if they actually rule in her favor, it's going to open up the floodgates, and what happens if somebody's in the outfield and the ball is hit into the outfield, and and people are going after the ball and everybody misses it and it hits somebody in the head and then they get hurt. I mean, is that a lawsuit also? So I'm interested to see what happens there. I think that could be really interesting. And then my favorite story, you know what? I'm gonna leave that to the end, my favorite story, because you're gonna get a kick out of it. But the Grammys were on the other day. I know. I didn't really care about it either. But the interesting thing was their ratings were down 50%. 50% over last year when the ratings were down. So it's just really crappy. And then there are these two artists, and I know you don't know either of them, and I really don't either, but one is Cardi B and one is Megan the Stallion. Okay, I don't even know. But they got up on stage and they did this duet performance. I don't know, not really a duet, but just a performance together. And there were actually like stripper poles like on the stage, and they're doing things, and the description of this was that it resembled softcore porn, what they were doing on stage. Okay. And these are role models to kids. No matter what, kids listen to this music, they look up to these people, they're seeing you doing these obscene things on the stage. It's ugly. It's ugly. So to me, I hope that these award shows, they use them to say things and to spread their own messages, which I don't think they're intended for. I just want to see people say, hey, thank you, mom, and thank you, dad, for your support, whatever. Take your trophy and go. But to have stuff like that, it makes it more unbearable to watch, and how can you have kids watching that kind of thing? I mean, can you imagine if your daughter was there watching, let's say she's a big Cardi B fan and she watches her wearing these skimpy outfits doing God knows what on the stage. I mean,
listen, I have younger kids, so I don't want to come across as tone deaf, and I don't want to come across as I think some of it you have to try to, set such a foundation that your kids aren't looking up to these morons that they have no reason to look up to, right? Like some of it, I think, is instilling it as a parent and saying, hey, you might like their songs, but don't look at them any more than a performer that you like music. I say it to my kids, even with sports. Like my son loves Pete Alonso. He's like the big young Met player. I'm like, You don't know Pete Alonso. You just like him as a ball player. That's awesome. He hits home runs. You like him. Right. You root for him. Don't make him on a pedestal beyond that. He's just a human, like I'm a human, like everybody else is. So I think we're just a celebrity crazed culture, which is just a disaster. And we have no more morals and values in this country. So that's how you get to 2021, where you just described what's going on at the Grammys. Even 20 years ago, that would have been unheard of to think that was going to be allowed. And 20 years later, now that's just something we allow. But that just speaks to the country and where we're at. So it's sad, but it's not getting better. So
It's unbelievable. And then from the column of Who Cares, turns out J-Lo and A-Rod are not breaking up. I know you were really torn up about that. So I'm glad to hear that they're really working together and trying to work.
Those two bozos were this close to owning the Mets. I would have cared. So
I know, right?
Thank goodness. Thank goodness for Steve Cohen.
Oh, you're telling me. You're telling me. Another thing that I thought was interesting. Did you ever watch Punky Brewster when you were young? That might have been a little bit before your time.
I mean, I knew it, but I didn't watch it. But I mean, it was a household name.
Well, the interesting thing was, she became really famous at age 7, or she played this young girl, or whatever. And they're actually making a remake of it, and I guess it's coming out this year, which I thought was kind of interesting. But anyway, when she was younger, she would always carry around a video camera with her, like her teenage years. So it was like she was friends with all of the who's who, child actors in Hollywood, and she used to go out with them. So she's got pictures, she's got voicemail messages, which were on machines back then. She's got these videos. She's got her diary that she wrote in, and after all this time, she's like, you know what? I'm going to put this stuff out there. But she's not doing it to throw anybody under the bus like a guy like Jose Canseco did. She's doing it just to talk about her life. And I watched the documentary. It's like an hour and 20 minutes, and it was actually really, really interesting. Some of her relationships and her life and why she's doing things, and really, really, really interesting. But the thing that I thought was really interesting was that she talked about her first sexual experience, and she said it was with Charlie Sheen. And I was like,
there's nothing interesting about that.
I'm like, that is interesting. I didn't see that happening. So I thought that was, of all the things, I thought that was the most interesting thing. But it is really interesting, and if you do get a chance to watch it, you probably should. I thought it was good. I thought it was well done. So last thing,
it's right up there with the Cobra Kai list. I'm on top of it.
You're doing so well with that. So the last two things, these are from the category of, huh? Really? 4 men were busted at the airport yesterday for trying to bring in 120 pounds of marijuana in their suitcases.
Isn't that legal now? You can't bring in 120 pounds?
I suppose it's not.
You can have 1,000 people bring in it, but you can't have one person.
Yeah. So I mean, why would you bring in 120 pounds of marijuana? I mean, come on.
It's a lot.
And then my favorite story, former Ohio University basketball player, a guy named DJ Cooper. He plays international, and internationally you're forced to take drug tests like, everywhere else pretty much. And he thought that he had pulled a fast one on them because he used somebody else's urine sample. Little did he know the person whose sample that he used is pregnant. And so when they got his blood test back, they said, hey, congratulations, you are not using performance enhancing drugs, but you are pregnant.
And in 2021, he could be like, that's wonderful. I'm so glad I'm pregnant.
Yeah. So needless to say, I believe that he has been suspended for improper use of a female's urine to try to get away with a drug test. So I thought that was really interesting.
Side note to men doing this, maybe you find another dude to take the urine test.
I know, right?
Just in case.
Interesting, right? Interesting. So that's all I got, man. That's all. I mean, I think there's a lot more we need to talk about. I think next week, maybe next week, we need to get into we need to do our baseball preview, which is going to take all kinds of education on our part, because this is going to be, I don't even know why you and I agreed to do a fantasy league. I mean, this is going to be ugly.
It's going to be fun. Come on.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
No, hey, good show. First one back in 3 weeks. Worked out the kinks a little bit, but it was nice to talk. It was a good time to be back because March Madness is fun.
Yep.
free agency in football. Before you know it, we'll have the baseball start, the NFL draft, and then forget it. Then time starts to fly. So looking forward to it.
All good stuff, man. I think I speak for everybody when I say really glad that you're okay, even though it was a rough experience. You're back. You're better than ever. You're just such a handsome man. You know, I can really appreciate that. You know, but thank you for joining us, everybody. Hope everybody has a great time watching the NCAA tournament. And remember, Phil says Gonzaga. Darrin says Illinois, and we all know that based on Super Bowl predictions, Darrin is usually right. So have a great day, everybody, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon back on Phil and the Mic.
See you guys.